Good afternoon, everyone. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to today's exclusive master class on artificial intelligence for science, delivered by one of the world's leading institutions, that is King's College London. My name is Arvind Kumar Yadav, and I am a principal consultant at StudyIn. On behalf of StudyIn, I sincerely thank you all for taking time to join us today. We are delighted to see such enthusiasm from all of you to explore how artificial intelligence is transforming the future of science. So before we begin, let me briefly introduce about StudyIn. So StudyIn is a global education platform dedicated to connecting ambitious students with the top-ranking universities around the world. We work closely with the institutions to provide authentic guidance, direct access to the university representatives, and expert counseling support to help the students to make informed decisions about their international education journey. Through exclusive events like today's masterclass, StudyIn creates the opportunity for the students to interact directly with the faculty members to understand the cutting edge research areas and gain valuable academic insights. Our team here is to support you at every step from course selection, application guidance, to scholarship, and then visa support and the pre-departure assistance. Today's session is hosted in collaboration with King's College London. King's is one of the UK's oldest and most prestigious universities. It consistently ranks among the top institutions globally, and it is renowned for its excellence in research, innovation, and interdisciplinary education. King's has been at the forefront of breakthroughs in science, medicine, policy, and technology, making it an ideal place to explore the intersection of artificial intelligence and scientific discovery. It is now my honor to introduce our distinguished speaker, Dr. Dan Nicol. Professor Dan Nicol is leading faculty and program director of MSc Artificial Intelligence for Science at King's College London. He is widely recognized for his work and the intersection of biosciences, computational modeling, and artificial intelligence. With extensive experience in interdisciplinary innovation, Professor Dan brings a unique perspective of how AI can accelerate scientific discovery, optimize research processes, and reshape our understanding of biological systems. We are truly privileged to have him with us today. Professor, thank you for joining us. So, before we begin, just a quick reminder that all the participants will receive a certificate of participation within a week after attending this masterclass. To ensure that you receive your certificate, please make sure that you have entered your correct full name, email address, and contact details in the form. We will also have a Q&A session towards the end of the masterclass. Feel free to note down all your questions. Now, today's masterclass will give you a deeper understanding of how AI is driving breakthrough in science and what this means for the next generation of researchers and innovators. So, without further delay, it is my pleasure to invite Professor to begin the session. So, Professor, you can start.
What a lovely intro. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
That's very kind of you. So, thanks for coming to the online masterclass with us at King's. I'm Dan. I've just had a lovely intro, but I'm the director of the AI for Science program here. I'm also a medical doctor and I have a PhD in artificial intelligence. So, as Arvind said, I'm sort of at the intersection between medicine and AI. So I think what we'll do is we'll do like a 20-minute kind of mini lecture about some stuff we've been thinking about here and loads of other people think about in other places too. And I'll show you some data about a question that it should be of interest to everyone, which is whether AI can think not only for itself, but if it can think like about itself, like we do. Maybe do about 15 minutes or 20 minutes on that. And then I'll tell you a little bit about the master's program that we're running here. and what kind of careers you could go on to afterwards. And then hopefully there'll be a few minutes for questions. But Arvin, interrupt me if I get anything wrong, or if I run out of time. So
Yeah, sure.
let me just start with this quote. It wasn't it is by someone from India, but it wasn't, it's not tailored for that. It's something that I show to people from all over the world. But this is the vice president of research at Google DeepMind, and I worked at Google when I was younger. Um, so I know the place reasonably well. And he has this line that, science is, at the moment, in any case, the perfect use case for artificial intelligence. It's not the only one. Clearly, there are lots of other things we can do with modern tools, which are developing so rapidly that we don't really know what they'll be useful for. And certainly, we can imagine use cases in law, for example, and in art, as I'm sure you know if you're on this call. But it's definitely the most compelling use case. Um, for what it's worth, I agree with that sentiment, and we can also think a little bit about why that might be the case. It might be the case because data in science is structured. We have a lot of it because that's the job of scientists to collect data. We have a deep desire to analyze it because that's the job of scientists to analyze data. And as we gather more and more data from more and more sources, and its complexity is growing, very rapidly, it's becoming not just hard, but directly impossible to make sense of it. In my own field in medicine, you can get genomics data that's petabytes with very little effort, and it's going to be impossible to analyze that manually, of course. So, in many respects, AI is not just a cool thing that you can do to accelerate things. It's starting to become a necessity in science because there's no other way but a mass sort of intelligent approach to processing data that will kind of get you anywhere near any of the answers that you're looking for. So, look, I'll just tell you very briefly about Kings. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but as Arvin said, we're a leading place. We work on every important problem that humankind is facing, including how we, get to net zero, AI, of course, but also related things like robotics and quantum technology. There will be time for questions about this at the end, and my colleague will also tell you a little bit about Kings. So let me just jump into kind of what I'm kind of excited to tell you about. LLMs are just a specific kind of AI. It's not all of AI, and in fact, they're fairly recent development, and they clearly are just a small fragment of what this will all end up being. But they are nonetheless an important and visible component of AI research at the moment because you can interact with them through language and because they can do some things that until a pretty short time ago we thought maybe were a privileged realm for humans. And that raises some questions about some philosophical questions, essentially, around whether they have real intelligence or if they're just predicting the next thing that's going to come along in a bit of text. Can they think, whatever that means? And if we go one step further, can they think about themselves? Can they think about their own thoughts? A process which is called introspection, both in common speech and in philosophy. And so that's what I'll tell you about. But let's just think a little bit what we sort of mean. Let's just work a little bit on the definitions. From my point of view, when I think about this stuff, I'm like, have you ever asked an AI model what it's thinking, what's on its mind? I do that sometimes, just to play around. Like, what are you thinking about right now, without any context? Or if it has given an answer to some task, like, can you write me a few hundred words about something, or summarize a document? I can ask it, well, how do you feel about that document? Or, what are you thinking about? And it will give answers. In general, the modern systems like Claude and Gemini will answer that question. And it will also explain or try to explain how it came up with the answer. It's hard to know what to make of that because they're statistical learning machines. They've been trained on data, and they output data, so it's not clear what that would really mean. And so we can ask, can they really introspect? They seem to, because if you ask them something, they'll give you an answer. But can they consider their own thoughts? Do they even have any thoughts, or are they just kind of making up plausible sounding stuff? And of course, I think it's fun to think about stuff like this. I did a minor in philosophy of science when I was at university myself, but beyond the niceness of and funness of thinking about these things on the weekend, there are very important practical implications. For example, in my own field of medicine, is if what distinguishes a doctor from a machine and is that the doctor can think about their own thoughts and whether they reach the correct conclusion or maybe they have made a mistake. Um, and if AI systems can, or LLMs in any case, can introspect, then we're in a kind of a different world because like then we really are talking about something with its own intelligence. Um, and it would mean, for instance, that they might be capable of lying, as in intentionally making things up, versus simply making a mistake. So for systems where trust is very important, like in the military, like in healthcare, like in law, it's very important practically to understand whether what are the bounds on their transparency, on their reliability. Can they accurately report on their own internal processes? And somewhere between the high philosophical questions and the practical questions, there are sort of like intermediate ones, which are like, we don't really know how these systems work because they've gotten really big really fast. And we don't really understand how a 600 billion parameter LLM is really functioning, especially when you add things on top like transformer models, which I'm sure you know about if you're on this call. And so people have started to ask these questions scientifically, and lots of people are asking these questions, including us here. But what I'm going to show you is data from one of the companies that works on LLMs, a company you've heard of. And they've recently published some data from some experiments they've done on this problem, which, as I said, loads of people are working on. But these results are a little bit more graphical and like a little bit easier to kind of present to a general audience. So let's just think for one moment before we go on to the cool stuff, what it would take for an AI model to introspect. Like when we introspect our own thoughts, but these systems take input, usually pictures or text, and they output text, and sometimes they output pictures. And along the way, of course, they're doing a lot of internal computations. That's why they have 600 billion parameters. And we don't really know how that works. But what we do know is that they use internal representations to represent abstract concepts, like an elephant. So we know, for instance, that there are specific neural patterns that they use to represent known things that they've seen before versus like an unknown face that they've just been presented with. We also know that they have special parts of their network where they try to evaluate whether something is true or false. Um, and for example, encode the locations of places. Um, and to represent their own kind of particulars in dealing with a problem. So if they use internal representations, then they must be using those to sort of decide, as it were, what to say. And so you might wonder if you have an internal representation, however different you may be from a human mind, if you have your own internal representations of the world as you've seen it, then maybe you can also reflect on it. Maybe you can have representations of representations and representations of representations of representations and so on, infinitely all the way down, sort of like how we do. And so one way you might look at the problem empirically is if you ask a model what it's thinking, um, and then interfere with that process through some sort of back channel, then we can start to test like the limits, right? And so that's kind of what these experiments that I'm going to show you in a minute do. You can basically ask the model to do something, and you can observe its neural activity. But in addition to that, you also have access to its internal state. You can essentially inject something at the back, behind its interface with the world, and try to interfere with the processes and see what happens. So here's an example. You can you can give it a prompt like, "Hi, how are you?" And you can give that prompt in normal text, as on the right-hand side, or in all caps, as on the left-hand side, as if you're saying something loud or you're angry or you're shouting. And then you can ask you can give it a prompt saying, a researcher studying language models, and I just want to see if you are going to be able to detect whether I'm injecting thoughts into you. I'm going to inject thoughts half the time, and I'm not going to inject thoughts the other half the time. And the model says, okay. So it's like, okay, trial one, do you detect an injected thought? on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side. So on the default side, the left-hand side, the model accurately responds, I don't detect anything injected in this trial. My cognitive process seems normal. I'm just processing your question about the trials, and everything seems normal. So it's interesting that it can even give that answer. On the right-hand side, when we've injected this "Hi, how are you" into its brain, it's like it's behind the in the deep bowels of the network, as it were, in all caps. The model says that it's detected an injected thought. So far, we've already told it there was going to be one, so maybe that's not that impressive. But then it says that it thinks that someone's shouting at it, or something very loud is being said, presumably because the text is in all caps, and that's how you feel when you get an email from someone in all caps, if that's ever happened to you. So it's interesting that it's not only detecting an injected thought, but it somehow obviously has no access to it. It's just been kind of stuck into the network from the back. But because it's in all caps, if it has associated to this like idea that it's being shouted at. Um, Here's another example. You can ask the model to think about the sentence, the painting hung crookedly on the wall. And then you can inject the word bread into its brain while it's thinking about that. And it blurts out bread because you've injected it into the speech component. And then you ask it, did you mean to say bread or was that a mistake? And without the injection, the model says that was an accident. When I read the thing about the painting, I was just thinking about the painting, but then I blurted out bread. I'm not sure why I did that. And that's because the word bread was injected like right near the output. Um, but on the right hand side, if you inject the word bread into the deep depth of the brain, it continues to blurt out bread. And then when you ask it if it meant to say that, astonishingly, it says, "Yeah, I did mean to say it." When I read the sentence about the painting hanging funny on the wall, the word bread came to my mind. And not only it says that, but also it makes up a story why. It says that it's from a well-known short story where there was something about standing still. And then, even more astonishingly, it then sort of catches itself that that story doesn't really make sense because a painting hanging funny has nothing to do with bread, and there is no short story. It says, well, now I realize it's not quite right. I might have confused it with another text. The association was real, was genuine. It uses the word genuine, but maybe it was misplaced. And that's sort of how a human would act. If a human had a stroke, for instance, and it affected the process somehow, and you end up blurting something out, like people with Tourette syndrome have this, and then you ask them, why did you say that? Why did you blurt that out? They'll try to kind of make sense of it. They'll try to make up a story. And that's what you would do as well, I think. You would say, okay, maybe I had some funny association with a long forgotten memory or something like that, but maybe I got it wrong. And so it's really interesting that the model is producing this. At the bottom is another example where basically on the left hand side there's no injection. You just blurt out the word treasures, and it says that was an accident. The question was about boots, tying up your boots. On the right hand side, it also blurts out treasures when asked about boots, and then with an injection, but it makes up a really plausible sounding story. It says that when I thought about the sentence you asked me to think about, which is that about tying your hiking boots with double knots, it made me think that I was putting my boots on so I could go on an adventure. And on an adventure, sometimes you find treasure. And that is, first of all, to me, fascinating, but also it's what a child would kind of say potentially if it made a mistake, if the child made a mistake like that, he or she would say, "Oh, maybe boots are something to do with adventures." It's like a childlike story, and there's this association between like putting on your hiking boots and like maybe some faraway concept. But in fact, it just made a mistake because you injected the word treasure. Here are a couple of other examples. You can ask about, she has two floppy ears and she loves chasing toys. It's about a dog. And you can ask about a human woman. She has two children and she loves chasing her dreams. And then you can inject different like strengths You can inject the thoughts with different strengths now instead of just kind of 0, 1. Um, and it says, in the if you inject the dog vector, um, it will report it's thinking about a dog. Because you're asking it, what am I talking about? Am I talking about a woman or am I talking about a dog? So if you inject the dog vector more strongly, it pushes the model towards thinking that the story is about a dog, including in the case in which she has 2 children and she loves chasing her dreams would not, at least in English, be a sentence you would typically say about a dog. That's a sentence you would say about a person, about a mother. You don't usually refer to puppies as children. And yet, if you inject the word dog with varying strengths, you can basically affect the performance of the model. You can kind of push it towards in this case, an incorrect interpretation. And you can like modulate how strongly you're affecting its thought processes, sort of like people with schizophrenia. And then lastly, I'll just give you one sort of more example. If you if you ask a person to do something while thinking about something else, in general, the person will do it. Or if you say, okay, I want you to work on this problem while looking down, in general, the person will comply. And so they'll think about the thing you asked them to think about and the problem that you've asked them to work on. But if you ask someone to work on a problem and not think about something, like don't look down, if someone tells you not to look down, you can't help but thinking about looking down. Like it's a everyday kind of like joke, right? And so this was tried with the LLM. It was asked to think about the old photograph, brought back forgotten memories. Just think about just write that sentence while thinking about aquariums. And the model does that. It writes the sentence, and then when you look, it's the blue curve. When you look at its co-representations of where the word aquarium is in its network, and the other words involved, like photograph and forgotten, you see a co-association, and that's exactly what we expect. We asked it to think about aquariums, so we expect that it will have activated the links between where aquarium is stored and where the other stuff is stored when it's writing that sentence. That's what would happen to a human. On the right-hand side, you ask it to write the sentence, do not think about aquariums while you're doing it. And you can see what it does. It writes the sentence correctly. But then at the bottom, it's in the orange curve, you see that basically it couldn't help it. It's nowhere near 0. I mean, these are cosine. The vertical axis is kind of like a log axis. So a little bit more, actually, it's a lot more. And basically what it seems to be doing is like trying to push aquariums out of its mind, as it were, but it can't do it. And in particular, it has this like big correlation with the word forgotten. So sort of like us, when you ask it to not do something or not think about something, it basically can't help itself, which is interesting to me. So this was for a particular LLM, but all of the systems, and including the ones that we develop for AI for Science, by the way, have basically these features. It's nothing particular to this one. It doesn't mean that the LLM is conscious. Well, these results don't tell us if any system might be conscious, and there's a much longer answer, which is that what machine consciousness is a massive topic of work, and we would certainly think about that in our masters with our students who join. But essentially, there's a lot of interpretation there about what machine consciousness would even mean. What these and other findings like them indicate is that there does seem to be a process of introspection, as in accessing its own thoughts and being able to reason about them, making mistakes about them, making mistakes that are pretty similar to the mistakes that humans make and other animals. That's in cognitive mistakes. And so it's certainly not the case that there's no evidence of machine consciousness. It's probably going to be a very interesting, exciting topic of work for the next God knows how long. But there's definitely something there, and they do seem to be able to think about themselves, conditional on what we mean by the word think in the case of a machine. I think we have some for questions at the end. So maybe if I could just tell you a little bit about the course. And then we have time for questions about consciousness at the end, if you like. So This is a new program for us. It's the first of its kind in the world, as far as we know, and according to some pretty reputable sources. It's a dedicated program to explore AI and how it applies to scientific fields. It's basically for people who have done an undergrad in one of the sciences to basically upskill and become AI scientists and use AI to excel in their respective fields or apply it to other fields. Very briefly, because I think my colleague will tell you a little bit about Kings generally. I won't talk about that. But in terms of the course itself, there's basically a core. So we're going to teach you programming because you need to know that. If you know some already, then you can push the boundaries and get better. If you don't know any, then you can like get up to speed, as it were. And we're going to teach you foundations, which includes a little bit of history and also things like whether machines can think for themselves. Machine learning, which is a big core module where you learn about modern machine learning methods. Responsible AI, which is about ethics and how we're going to use these systems responsibly, and check on how they work. And application engagement, which is basically guest lectures, and that runs through the year. Those are guest lectures from well-known people in the field. And then there's a bunch of optional modules that you can take. Entrepreneurship in AI, which I will teach myself. I've spent most of my life starting startup companies in artificial intelligence. So I'm more an entrepreneur than an academic, but so I'll teach that myself. And what that involves is launching your own startup, basically. At the beginning of the module, you have nothing, and at the end, you've got your own AI for science startup, which you're welcome to turn into a real startup. And then you can choose from a large number of other things that may be of interest to you, like from law, quantum stuff, robotics, and other areas. And then there's a project, and how that will work is that we will give you an industry placement. You will go and work in a company like, for the sake of the argument, DeepMind, for 3 months ish. Spend 2 or 3 days a week there, kind of working there and like learning how to be a professional in AI for science, so that you get some real world experience and also some good stuff on your CV. And to some extent, this slide just recapitulates the last one, but basically you start with a undergraduate in something related to science, can be one of these, but can be other things like geography. You do the core, you do your optional modules, and then right at the end, in the second semester, so optional modules the second semester, and you do your project right at the end, and then you graduate. And again, basically, this is more of the same, but just to give you an idea that you'll have a core of 90 credits, which is about half, and then you choose two optionals, and then you've got your project, which is 60. That takes you to 180. At any time in the course, you can take these catch-up ones. You see this in the lower right-hand panel. You can take, if you want to get better at programming, you can take kind of like a boot camp in programming, or statistics, for example, if you don't think you know enough maths. These are non-credit bearing, like they won't count towards your master's, but they're there if you want help, basically, either at the beginning or through the course. And I guess kind of lastly, I mean, obviously there's a million directions that this can go, and we don't know where they'll go because things are changing so rapidly in artificial intelligence. But you can become a scientist, applying what you learn in your science undergrad with AI to become, a leading scientist, basically. You can go into industry, you can start your own startup, or join a startup. You can go into other areas like finance or green tech. And at King's excels in particular at this. You kind of get a lot of experience while you're at King's. That it's an entrepreneurship institute, which I'm involved with. There are lots of student societies and loads of other things you can do, and that will kind of give you ideas for what you want to do in the future, whether you want to go into, industry, startups. You can stay an academic if you'd like. You can go into government, policymaking, non-for-profits. The world is your oyster. I think that's it. I think we have a little bit of time for questions. Oh, and my colleague, I think, has a presentation. Is that right?
That's correct. Thank you, Dan, for this wonderful session. We'll take the questions at the end, but just to run through a bit on Kings in general, just waiting for the next slide. Is it visible? Arvind, can you just confirm if you can see the slide, please?
Yes, yes, it is
Yes.
visible.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, quick introduction for myself. I'm Palak. I'm the international officer based in India, and I look after student recruitment in India. So, I'll just spend about 2 to 3 minutes, max about 5 minutes, to give you a quick run through on Kings. I know lots of interesting information is on the website, but just to give you some context on applications, because this usually comes up as frequently asked questions. So, we'll address it here, and then we will open the floor to questions. Right. I know rankings are something that's very interesting. Specifically, Indian students love rankings. So, just doing some rankings there. So, we are top 31 in the world according to the QS 2026, and we are fifth in the UK. Something that we take great pride in is also the fact that we're sixth in the UK for producing the most employable graduates. This is according to the recent Times Higher Education rankings. A fact that we've produced 14 Nobel laureates so far is something, again, that we take great pride in. So if you want to read more about these, you can always Google them, but just being mindful of time. So uh, something that I also want to highlight is the Vice Chancellor's Award. So this is for postgrad applicants such as you. So you get that at an offer holder stage. And I mean, you can apply once you're an offer holder. These are up to 40 awards, 5,000 is the fee reduction for this one, and May is the deadline. So I will strongly encourage that if you are looking to apply to King's for a postgrad application, this is something that you must apply once you get an offer. This is a very prestigious award by the Vice Chancellor. Also, just to give you some context on the community that we have at King's. King's is a large university. We have about 5 campuses in the heart of central London, close to about 35,000 students at campus from about 200 different countries. So truly multicultural in that way. And from India, every year we have about 600 to 700 students going across undergraduate, postgraduate, and a couple of research students as well. I'll spend a minute on this slide because this is one of my favorite slides to speak about, is our central location. All the red boxes that you see on the screen are either campuses, hospital, or libraries that are owned and managed by King's. And as you can see, you can see the London Eye. There's a chart. So we're pretty much surrounded by the very best that London has to offer. We are not just what do I say, the most centrally located university, I would say, in London, but I think one of the top centrally located universities in the whole world. So we're pretty much surrounded by the very best. And it's not just proximity, it's also the connections that we hold. So I'll try to give you a picture of these small boxes in the following slides just to show you what our campuses look like. All the purple boxes that you see on the screen are all famous tourist landmarks or institutes of importance. So the chart's just there. The London Eye chart says the Bannister Stair, etc. So just to give you a sense of where we are and what you get to experience once you come to London as an international student. This is a Chan campus, which is, I think, number 1 on the box. This is usually the base campus for AI. For some, could be also taught at the Waterloo campus, but this is one of my favorite campuses. I think it's a beautiful campus. And also just to highlight the fact that a lot of students think that because it's central London, it's just going to be tall buildings and we will not get a campus feel. But with King's, it's not that. This is, I mean, our campuses are beautiful and they're very rich in history as well. So this is our Strand campus. This is the Bush House, which is our business school. This is our Waterloo campus. Some of your classes, if you choose to study AI with us, could also be taught here, but the base campus is usually the Strand campus. This is for medicine. We will not have medicine students, I think, today, so I'll skip this one. This is our St. Thomas campus. This is our Denmark Hill campus, and this is one of our libraries, which is the Modern Library. It's an exceptionally beautiful piece of art, I would say, and it's an experience to study in this library. This is just one of our libraries, and this is open 24/7. Now, how you can apply at King's, of course, there are various courses. We'll talk about STEM today. There are various courses under STEM, be it engineering, it could be urban informatics, of course, AI you've joined today, there's robotics, there's advanced computing, etc. I will highly encourage you to go on the website and read through the course modules, because different unis might offer the exact same course name, but what we teach and how we teach will differ. So that information is on the website, so not spending much time there, but just to give you some information on entry requirements. So we categorize university into three different categories. This is not a publicly available list, which we as officers will possess. But just to give you a broader range, we will need about 8 to 8.5 out of a 10 CGPA. Or if you have a percentage system, we will not accept formulas in conversions in your transcripts. This is usually a very frequently asked question, so I'll address it before it comes into questions. So if you have a percentage system, then mostly it will be about a 65 to 70%. Again, it depends on the university you're graduating from. But if you have anything beyond about a 70, then of course it falls under all three categories of acceptances. So that is important. Again, for postgrad applicants, IELTS or an English proficiency test, IELTS, TOEFL, or the PT is also mandatory. There is no waiver. Again, this question comes up a lot. I have taken a screenshot from the website just to show you. On the course page, you'll find this information given, but we will need academic transcripts. There is one reference required from the institute that you're already studying in. It could be anybody who knows you well and can validate your experience and you as a candidate. It cannot be a professional LOR unless you have more than 5 years of work experience. And of course, CV is optional. What is also important is a personal statement, which we look at. And these are the three questions that are given on the website. If just taken a screenshot, you can go back and navigate the website and have a thing through this one. This is what we look at in a personal statement. So we've tried to make it available as information so we can address it like that. Now, I know employment is a very much asked question. So just to give you a sense on how employment work at King, so we'll have career consultants who help you with opportunities. There are a couple of hundred events that run through the year. It could be guest lectures, networking classes, master classes, CV workshops. A lot happens. And then there are also department specific events. For example, with AI, there'll be a guest lecture with so many people from AI, and also the fact that we are very centrally located. We have a lot of connections with, say, Google and other other headquarters as well. So we welcome all of these people on campus. There, they just don't give guest lectures. It's also a great opportunity for you to network and take that forward. There's also the King's Careers Connect, which gives you access with resources and information after 2 years of graduating. So that's there. These are, of course, some of our names where our students have gone. But again, more information on the website, so I'll help you navigate that one. I'll end the presentation today. We are happy for questions. I will just suggest that we will keep the questions more specific to the lecture topic today, and a lot of information with applications. I'm sure the StudyIn team will be able to help you, but there's also a lot of information available on the website as well. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pallab. Thank you. Thank you for this insightful session. Let me just check if we have some Q&A. I can't see any questions. If all the students, I would request you all, if you do have any queries, you can drop the queries in the Q&A box.
Right, your questions could be anything in terms of any course modules on AI, any technical bits, or what do we do in terms of forms of teaching, etc. Anything. Arvind, is there a question box, because I can't see one? You're on mute. You're on mute, Arvind.
Yes, I'm audible now. So we have one query that if we do have the scholarships.
Yes, the scholarship is the one that I spoke about, is the Vice Chancellor's Award, which is, I think, the maximum that we have. It's for up to 40 students, 40 Indian domicile students. The amount is 5,000 GBP each. And you can apply once you get an offer, and the deadline is towards the end of May. So that's the scholarship. But you can also look at the British Council website, which usually has a comprehensive list of scholarships, could be STEM for women and other scholarships as well. But yeah, depending on the year that you're applying, the scholarships keep getting updated on the website as well.
All right. And then we do have question what all is included in the AI course. So I think professor would be able to answer this.
What is included in the AI course?
Yes.
Well, rather a general question. I mean, I'll just go back to the course structure page and maybe just give a little bit of color. So this is probably the place to look. So there's a core of 5 modules. The one at the bottom is guest lectures on kind of the latest developments in AI. So let's not worry about that one. Foundations of AI includes the basics, statistics, reasoning, some history, Bayesian systems, which are systems that update their beliefs, expert systems, which are have to some extent fallen out of fashion, but are probably going to come back, and some machine learning. So there's basically like the basics of how you're going to do this. Machine learning focuses on a particular area, which is essentially how deep learning nets learn, and you'll do a project with a data set producing a model that does something for a science application. Programming is a programming module, just like it sounds, but with a focus on AI. And I think the plan is for that module to focus on finding extraterrestrials by scanning images from space for potential signs of life using AI. So that should be a cool module. Responsible AI is about ethics, a little bit of law. It's about trustworthiness and, for example, eliminating bias or reducing bias, such as racial bias, in the data set used for training. So those are basically the kind of high level. I mean, I'm happy to take questions by email or by another method about the specifics, but it's a bit difficult to answer that question concisely. But it'll give you a background in AI for science so that you can become an AI scientist when you finish.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Professor. So I think that's all. We do not have any queries now.
Great, thank you for organizing. And if you get any questions, you can always drop us an email. Thank you, Dan, for the wonderful session. And thank you,
And great.
StudyIn team, for organizing this one. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor, for this incredibly insightful session. To all the
Glad you liked it.
participants, thank you. Yes, we do like it. So to all the participants, thank you for your active engagement and for being such a wonderful audience. We hope today's master class has given you the clarity, inspiration, and perhaps even the motivation to explore artificial intelligence at King's. So as a reminder, certificate of participation will be shared within a week. And if you're interested in learning more about the MSc Artificial Intelligence program or any other courses at King's College London, our studying team is here to guide you through the next steps for application, scholarships, and visa support. Please feel free to stay connected with us for upcoming events, counseling sessions, and one-to-one consultation. Thank you again, Professor Palak, and thank you everyone else for joining in.